Next topic I want to talk about is a tweet by my man Worcester. And Worcester, I'm going to read it to you guys, or maybe you aren't aware. He said, "I'm really concerned, and have been for a fair while, about how accepted it is to use external programs to aid while speedrunning. It's so commonplace, and it feels very wrong. I already think it's crossed the line, but the point is, it could get even worse. But the point it could get to is even worse." So I want to ask you guys thoughts about that. External programs to help speedrunning. For example, RNG manipulation, maybe things to kind of make sure you get the right seed and stuff like that. What do you think about that, Simp? Let you handle it first.
Okay, something like that, you need a proper seed or manipulating RNG, and is it not manipulation that's within the game, that is definitely crossing the line and is something that I think a lot of people would agree would be not smart to have in the community, just because it's another barrier. But there's things like auto splitter I think might fall under that category, where it's like an external thing that makes it nice for speedrunning, which is just, it feels like a cosmetic thing in a video game. Like it's not a big deal. It just helps the person. It's not really a big deal. But then you've got stuff where some communities have dealt with it and have had conversations, and others have not quite been there yet. For example, Ocarina of Time community has banned any sort of mapping of analog input to digital input, because it would make things like Hessing and ESS position much easier to do, and would therefore make the entire speedrun, or a lot of parts of the speedruns in Ocarina of Time, a lot easier. And it would just be another handicap that doesn't really make sense to have. You know, I think the idea of speedrunning is that you take this game as it is with the controller, and you do the best that you can with it. And so once you start introducing these little modifications, then it kind of gets crazy. But with Mario 64 right now, they have the new cannonless setup in Jolly Roger Bay, where you map up to a digital input, then you can just mash a button and frame walk up a pillar in the water. And it only saves a couple of seconds. I don't know the exact time. And right now, it's not a huge deal. You know, the community's allowing it, but maybe down the line, it will become more of a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think about that, Panga?
I agree with Simply for pretty much everything. I think one of the things that should be, if you want to like use external programs for whatever, like, you know, manipulating RNGCs, I think that should be just a separate category all together.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you have the people that want to do that, they can fight over that category, and then people that actually want to play the game, manipulate in the game without using any external programs to help you aid RNG or whatever, then just do it in the normal game.
Mm-hmm.
The things like the auto splitting, I see that as like a general like quality of life improvement, and doesn't really impact your gameplay wise. I can see that, like, you know, track and field, you have a stopwatch, and you have like maybe your coach telling you, oh, this lap was too fast, this lap was too good. I mean, it's fine. It'll let you know like how you're doing in the speedrun itself without actually manipulating anything. So I think things like that is fine. But like when you start having to use those external programs to get a specific outcome before like the game even starts, or like you can't have something out of your control when you play the game, then I believe that should just be a separate category.
Before I let you answer the Beast, I want to add a few examples of what he was talking about. So one example he's talking about is metronome timers people use to, like, you know, in some Pokemon games, for example, as of course is his forte. If you start in a certain second, it'll give you a certain seed, right? So if you say, if you do 7:04 in the morning on Thursday, you get this seed, right? And if you start the game exactly on that time, it'll make that seed happen. So you can use a timer on your, you know, screen that'll say, you know, ready, countdown, and go, right? So it's a gray area, right? Is that it's just a timer in the end, but it is helping you push that start button at the right exact time. So if I add that extra information, the Beast, what do you think about that? Something like that.
Yeah, like Panga said, I think it's, you know, a lot of games have tons of different categories, and sometimes they can get lost, you know, like I think in most games there's usually one or two main categories that people care about, and then I think in the community they may, you know, if it's somebody in the Pokemon community talking about like Ocarina of Time or something, like I don't think it matters. But if the people like that directly, you know, moderate or play in that game, if they all agree, like, yeah, we like the use of a metronome or some sort of thing to examine RNG like that, like if they like it, I don't think that people should be worried about it if, you know, the majority of the community agrees. And usually when they do that, it's something like it's either fun for the runners or fun to watch, and, you know, you can always make a new category, and then People could complain that like, oh, we have too many leaderboards, it's split up, blah blah blah. But yeah, I think that, you know, there's also things like input displays where you plug your controller into this Arduino device to have your inputs show up on screen, and it doesn't do anything except it, you know, it shows up to make the viewers be able to see what you're pressing and stuff. And a lot of people say it should be like just the controller plugged into the console, no anything crazy. But I mean, you also have like action replay or game shark codes, whatever, to have save states and stuff for practicing. And I don't know, how different is it saying, well, I can't afford an action replay or whatever to get these save states running, so, you know, I'm disadvantaged, even though they're not directly using it in the run. They're practicing way more efficiently than someone else. I'm not super involved in any speedrunning communities, but to me as a viewer, like, if it doesn't feel like cheating and it's more interesting to watch, I like to see it. But if it feels like, you know, they're cheating out on the core part of what makes the run good, then that's obviously, you know, where people would say, well, it's not as fun anymore, it doesn't really feel like you're playing the game now. So that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I would.
Interesting.
Go ahead, Simp.
Covered some different bases there. You know, you definitely, different communities handle different things, and so there can't be like a catch-all, because every game has its own community and every game has its own way that it functions. And I think that's why it's such a difficult issue to sort of stand on, because it's a pretty blurry line between, okay, when is this not a problem and when is this becoming a problem?
I think, why don't we have the line where, like, you know, when you use that different, like, Simply used it at the pace, they use that separate thing, the arcade stick, to get that jump up the pole, like you were talking about.
Yeah,
like, for me, that feels really not, at first, for a showcase race, like, that was awesome, that was hype. But for World Records, that just feels wrong, like, you know, changing controllers in the middle of a run to get something a little bit easier. Because then someone could say, why don't you use that in other times, you know? But what about the line of, like, changing controllers for the Bowser throws, right? Changing, you know,
Right.
like, it's an endless slippery slope. So I think things that help the viewer experience, like, you know, input displays, auto splitters, that stuff should always be allowed, because it doesn't affect anything really. It just helps the viewers watch, and I think that should be of utmost importance. But then things that make things easier, like changing controllers, like RNG finders, I think that should be easily dismissed. But it seems like there's more to it than that, because obviously it's not happening yet. You know what I mean? If it was an easy answer, it would already be done, right?
It's tough, man. Case by case, it seems like the only appropriate way at the moment when it's such grassroots
Stuff. Yeah. All right, guys, let's go to the next topic here.